Okay. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us to this new seminar series. This seminar is promoted by Imperial Network of Excellence through Life Cycle Approaches. Just a few words about the network before we begin. The Imperial Life Cycle Network aims to bring together and connect life cycle related research and researchers across Imperial, as well as connect its members to the wider life cycle community. The purpose of this network is to foster collaborations and facilitate networking, as well as to share knowledge and contribute to advancements within the life cycle field. For further information about the network, please do visit our website and follow us on Twitter. And also for those practitioners that are based in the UK, you can also join the Life Cycle Community UK LinkedIn group. This seminar series started last year with the difference that the seminars are quarterly this year. And the next seminar is expected to take place in September. So you can keep an eye on our social networks or sign up to our member list. So through our website in the events section, and keep up to date with the upcoming network activities. Now, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Professor Sonia Valdivia is a scientific director at the World Resources Forum with a strong background in social life cycle assessment. She is indeed a co-author of the social LCA guidelines. She also focuses on the areas of sustainable recycling industries and life cycle sustainability management. Before, she was a program officer at the UNEP Division of Technology, Industry and Economics, and coordinated the Secretariat of the UNEP SETAC Life Cycle Initiative. She is also an honorary professor at the Leuphana University of Lunenburg, convener of the ISO 59014 on secondary materials, MIC member of the Global Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program, and also co-author of relevant publications, including the Medellin Declaration on Marine Litter and the Life Cycle Sustainability Assessment Guideline. And her presentation today is about social life cycle assessment for better informed decision-making at policy and business levels. Just a brief comment on the dynamics of the seminar. All the questions should be posted in the chat window, and this will be addressed by Sonia at the end of her presentation with the support of Paisan, our network colleague. So thank you very much, Sonia, for accepting this invitation, and it's an enormous pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Thank you very much, the Life Cycle Network of the Imperial College London, and all the participants that are here today. It's really my pleasure. I would have loved to be with you face to face, but maybe we wouldn't have had such an audience if having a presential meeting. So I'm very happy that it's working out very well. So I'm going to share my slide deck and would like to start with what I prepared for today. I want to present to you the most recent developments or updates, we would say, on social lifecycle assessment of products. The focus will be on products. I will highlight this several times because you can also have the option of having social LCA for organizations. The time is not enough for going into details. And this is in order to support better informed decision making at policy and business levels. Obviously, this also supports consumer decision making processes, as you will see during this presentation. Where do we start? The journey is to me, and I think to many organizations and initiatives, starts when we want to address sustainability. And this is a term that we know for a long time, and we agree there is consensus that it's about addressing the three sustainability dimensions, the three dimensions that are about social, environmental, and economic aspects. So I think governments and in many policies and frameworks, this is very, very well understood. And this is where we are coming from, how to address these three dimensions in order to improve our decisions to have a good major impact on all what we are doing. Well, recent surveys, recent research, and as you can see, this one was done last year during the pandemic times, shows that it's extremely important to take more seriously, in a more comprehensive way, the social, socioeconomic related aspects. This survey was done within the Globe Scan Sustainability Survey and addressed a number of sustainability leaders worldwide, 700 experts from 71 countries, and which were asked about the focus of companies in order to strengthen the resilience of the organizations. And what were the most urgent actions, most important actions to be taken by these organizations? Well, the four most important actions, it's not a surprise, but actually, if you see the top four ones, it's kind of because they are consistent and the trend, and this supports very much the social LCA background and what social LCA wants to contribute to. It's about having environmental sustainability, environmental, social, and corporate governance systems in companies is extremely important nowadays. Thinking of new business models, so no remaining in the old traditions in the past, but rethink and improve the current status. This is also extremely important. Then the planning of risks and business continuity. So when we talk about social LCA, risks is a very important aspect, as you will see along the process of assessing socioeconomic impacts. And the transformation of supply chains. So supply chains are stakeholder groups, and they are also quite relevant to be addressed, to be taken into consideration in social LCA. As you see, it's very, the tool, the technique that we are bringing is very relevant nowadays, and because the social aspect, the sustainability aspects, and the fragility of systems became visible, especially during the last year and a half, in everywhere, in all countries in the world. And to be more precise, companies more and more already before the pandemics started or need to show that they are not linked to social issues, to critical social issues. For several reasons, of course, it's an ethical aspect. I mean, no, this is not correct behavior, but also it will damage their whole probably branding, the whole work they are doing, and could jeopardize their development. This is about the companies, and by the way, this is about, for example, a study that I have been developing in the past on child labor in Africa from an industrial value chain that is related to metals. So you see how concerned are companies in trying to understand what is behind what they are producing, what they are sourcing. Public authorities also need more and more elements and tools and techniques in order to be able to develop and apply integrated product politics. And one of them is a very well-known program known Extended Producer Responsibility, for example, or public procurement. They are linked, they learn and appreciate a lot social LCA findings and results from the sectors and value chains concerned. And more consumers want to know, like us, want to know what is behind what we purchase, what we consume, if they are produced sustainable, or what are the hidden situations behind our products. So this is now, we are now more sensitive, and the awareness is growing with the time. We also know that since the Sustainable Development Goals was developed, there is a huge momentum. I mean, more and more initiatives are emerging and trying to contribute to achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The deadline is for 2030. And if we would have time to go into each of them, which we don't have, unfortunately, but the main message of this slide, what I wanted to show you, is that, for example, the ones that are not highlighted in this is very light green color are directly or indirectly related to socioeconomic impacts. So they are addressed, can be addressed through social LCA. Just to give you 2-3 examples: no poverty, gender equality, or zero hunger, decent work and economic growth, etc. So this is about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and as we will know later, some targets that are associated with them are very much in line with indicators that we work on social LCA as well. And life cycle assessment contributes to the sustainability assessment. And in the evolution and in the journey, what we witness is, of course, we almost all started with environmental LCA. And to give you a number on how many there are nowadays, it would be impossible, but only the largest database in the world, by the way, has 18,000 data sets available. So you can imagine by now we probably have more than 100,000 LCAs developed, because companies also develop for their own, purposes, which are not published. I'm not just talking about the published or well-known LCAs available. So this is the basis. But then there are also an important number of life cycle costing studies, which we would ask ourselves, yes, but we don't see many published. Actually, we see very few, because they are being developed for internal purposes and they are not published. But many sectors, or several sectors, especially the building, automotive sector, they develop, design products, the IT sector as well, considering the life cycle stages, and they need to understand the cost impacts of the products they are doing in order, of course, to reduce costs, but also to see how consumers would be impacted while using the products, to give you an example. So the lifecycle costing sector tool has been also being applied for a while, and social LCA is kind of new. We started in 2009 with the first version, and there is about 1,000 to 5,000 studies. This is not a large number. The good thing is that through this learning process, a 3-year revision activity took place since 2017-18, and in 2020 we launched a revised version of the social LCA guidelines, which you see on the left of this slide. Now, moving a bit forward, in looking into the future, we already start to see the life cycle sustainability assessment, which in that case bases on the framework of having the 3 dimensions, the 3 social LCAs that you see there, taken into account and named as life cycle sustainability assessment, provide results that allow us making decisions in a holistic way, having the 3 perspectives discussed and more visible for decision makers. So this is a bit about the journey and how LCA is contributing to the sustainability assessment. Since I mentioned already lifecycle sustainability assessment, to give you the more visual way we define this, it's about having the three lifecycle assessments developed, but not about adding results. Please don't misunderstand this equation. It's about having the findings and read the results in combination with, meaning you have the environmental results, the social LCA results, the life cycle costing, and you can better visualize trade-offs possibly, maybe some advantages on one side, some very negative impacts on the other sides, and in that way you can make a decision. This is the definition of life cycle sustainability assessment, LCSA. Now I wanted to, with support of the team of the Imperial College Lifecycle Network, to ask you, have you used social LCA? Have you done a lifecycle sustainability assessment? Just to give me a bit of an idea on how detailed I could go on some slides, in spite of the little time we have. I think the idea was that a pool is shared, right? In the chat, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to share the website for the poll in the chat. If you can access it here with the code 56804. I put it down in the chat as well. Yeah, so if you can go, you can go on that website. I can activate the poll now, and then you can vote on the poll whether you have used S-LCA or not.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So we will check the results a bit later. You just interrupt me when you think that you have some numbers so we can comment on them. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So we continue. Then in order to move towards social LCA as part of the sustainability assessment, I mentioned we start on environmental LCA, which is about having this product system interacting with the nature, with ecosystems, with environment. In social LCA, what we have is this product system interacting with the stakeholders. So there we have workers, consumers, society, at a larger scale, of course, value chain holders, children, community. So this is a different type of interaction. So social LCA is a technique to evaluate positive and negative impacts, social impacts of a product organization. As said before, in this presentation, I will focus on the product pathway, because as you may understand, the lack of time doesn't allow us. By the way, you could still research in the literature. We call it Slca when it's about social organizational LCA, just for your information, and if you're interested. And don't forget that here it's also about positive impact. This is we remind this because we are not used to talk about this. You come from environmental LCA. We will mainly talk and focus, address the negative impacts, correct? So here we have also the positive impacts notion. And what for? Why do we have been doing social LCAs? I can tell you also from my experience that I have been doing this and I have been training on social LCA for several reasons, very practical reasons. For example, companies needed this information, and not because they wanted to do research and publish in a paper. No, they wanted to use the results for their corporate social responsibility documents. They wanted to identify risks. They wanted to understand the hotspots and risky conditions in order to improve them along the value chains. As I mentioned at the beginning, when I did this child labor study, it was confirmed that there was child labor in the value chain concern. So immediately I am not part of that process anymore, I don't know, but the companies gathered in order to see how to address the presence of child labor in their value chains. And there are measures to be taken that were taken. They also want to strengthen the open the dialogue with the interested and affected parties for communication, because once you know who they are, then you have the faces recognized and you start talking to them instead of really stopping processes. Now you know that, for example, the neighbors, the community are important, so that you can continue successfully growing up your food that is needed for your products. So this is the kind of benefits or needs for doing in a more practical way this social LCA. Also, examples of communication.
Excuse me, Sonia.
Yes.
I think we have reached sort of a equilibrium. So we have now 70% participants saying 70% of them have not used social LCA before, and only 30% has used LCA.
30% have used.
Yeah.
Okay, and LCSA not yet?
No, there's only one question here.
Okay, that's good. Good, that's 1/3, so that's an average, but it's still a very good group, really, that you 30% have been, in contact, have been exposed to social LCA. Is already very good. Congratulations as a group. Okay, we continue with examples. The information that results from social LCA can be used in labels. You know, this very well-known fair trade label. We know it's not a complete social LCA, but at least several indicators can be taken from social LCA studies. There is a direct connection. Ideally, we should try to connect with them and have synergies and improve some indicators that the fair trade label uses, and also get back from receive feedback from them on some indicators that we could improve or better focus in social LCA. There could be synergies there, of course. And as mentioned before, when talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, there is clearly a number of indicators, targets that are linked directly with social LCA topics and indicators. So this is the way we can use these the results in our communications. So on Sustainable Development Goals, I extracted a couple, several indicators, not many, so that could give you this idea, could confirm this use. When talking about child labor, the indicator 871, for example, requires to report on the proportion and number of children that are between 5 and 17 years old, by sex also, and with this, this is the type of information we can extract from social LCA study, as I will show you later. On the right, what we have is the environmental LCA indicators, and maybe because of time, we don't go into detail. When we do a life cycle sustainability assessment, it confirms that with the environmental LCA, you are also contributing, helping, assessing progress towards Sustainable Development Goals. This was a bit the message. In these examples, they were referring to renewable energy, or the proportion of fish stocks that are being fished, linked to the specific SDG on ocean life, in the ocean, for example. And another example on social LCA indicator that is used for the Sustainable Development Goals reporting is the number of accidents, occupational incidents, accidents per 100,000 workers, and there this is a type of issue, of aspect we research on in social LCA as well. Okay, so where do I start in doing social LCA? We have already mentioned that it's helpful, and we all know the environmental LCA background. So understanding the commonalities or similarities and the differences is a very good first step. Similarities is that they both share the same ISO framework, In both cases, we need large amounts of data, but it depends at the end, because in environmental LCA, yes, sometimes we could agree that relevant data is less than all the data we plan to collect. So actually, it's about being clever and defining what type of data we need, from which sources we need, and which life cycle stages are the critical ones. So this is also the same case in social LCA. We have inventories per functional unit. For example, one functional unit could be 1,000 t-shirts. I will explain that it's not only that. We need to describe the t-shirts and utility, that is the product utility. In both cases, we identified critical points, so where are what we call the hotspots, and both techniques generate powerful results for decision making. The European Commission already stated in early documents that considers LCA as one of the most powerful tools for assessment. So this is a very important statement. In both cases, third-party revision is recommended in order to be able to claim results, to communicate results externally. The differences, and this might be more interesting. In social LCA, you have a product's utility, as I said before, which means you describe not only in terms of numbers like 1,000 t-shirts, but you also describe the usefulness of the product. You can add more aspects in the description, for example, related to the affordability of the product, of the contribution to the well-being of the consumer. There are several aspects depending on the product that can be part of this description that is called product utility. You find the definition in the social LCA guidelines. You also define and need to consider the perspectives and concerns of the stakeholders. This is not needed in environmental LCA. In social LCA, you have not only quantitative but also qualitative data that is used for this assessment. And this is this can be key data that then will be used for final results in the social LCA. And the information about the field, I mean, on site, is more crucial on social LCA. Maybe that's the reason, I'm not sure, but you have only two databases that provide social hotspots, but non-database would be able to go at a very detailed level of the information about certain process or product, the way we find for environmental LCA. That's why in social LCA we need to go and see methods for collecting data on site that is needed for evaluation. Also, on the differences, the organizations are part in social LCA, for example, the administration or services that are not part of, that are not directly impacting on the product are considered in the evaluation. We have positive impacts, as mentioned before. Job creation is very positive. It could be training also, education, because companies, through the processes of production, contribute to increasing the capacities of workers. This is considered as training, as education, for example. Also, social LCA promotes an iterative process, meaning the first time you do a social LCA based on our experience, and what we recommend is probably mainly to be used for internal purposes. So to check where are we, which are my major findings or maybe critical aspects, hotspots, and then you improve the situation, and maybe the second and third iteration can provide results that you can communicate externally. So this is about iteration process characteristic. And then doing social LCA step by step. So here we have the framework assets as in ISO 14040, and the first 4 steps is kind of a standard. You define if it's about an LCA of a product organization, in that case will be of a product. Then we define which is the product concern, then you define the goal and the scope, and then the functional unit. These are the first 4 steps, and I would like to show you the example for electronics. Let's say we develop social LCA of a product that is one mobile, and the goal is to understand what the critical social inputs from 100 mobiles are, just to give you a number for the calculations. In order to manage them properly and report results in the annual CSR report. So we go then to the functional unit description. We said it's the product, but also we describe that this product meets the communication, saving capacity, and camera and video needs of an individual, lasting for 4 years at least. You see, many of you would say, no, but I use my mobile only for 2 years. Well, actually, they should last longer. And there are some brands that are working towards that. Let's talk about Fairphone. And the mobile should be affordable. This is the product concern. And with refurbishing possibilities. Again, this is an hypothetical case, or maybe there are already, but I wanted to illustrate how the functional unit could be defined. So then we go to the next step, 5, that is about defining the stakeholders' concern. And we go then to the subcategories of impact and so on. Concerning the stakeholders' concern, there are 5 groups, as I mentioned earlier, and these 5 stakeholder groups they are concerned about the 6 big areas of protection on social LCA. There is no one by one. They all relate, I think, to most of them. The 6 areas of protection are human rights, governability or governance, cultural heritage, working conditions, health and safety, and socioeconomic impacts. I maybe wanted to, if you just want to put in the chat, if we have time, we can read the results. If you could, from now on, a bit think of one impact, subcategory of impact related to one stakeholder. There are 5 listed concerning the value chain of mobiles, for the production of mobiles. It was in order to make you think of the possibilities that we can see later in the examples confirmed if you find them. Let's say one impact on consumers. Which one would that be? Maybe you can write in the chat. It's just in order to keep us thinking of options. If that's okay with you. And to give you the broad spectrum of subcategories of impact per stakeholder group, this is the last list, the most updated list we have for the stakeholder groups subcategories. Maybe the most well-known group is for workers, on which we will not go into detail, and the new one is on children, and I would like to highlight this. We discussed that this stakeholder group is important in order to not to disregard a very important group that is affected by decisions that we adults make. We buy products for the children. We assume that they are fine for them, they are good for them, but how would we really be impacting on them? Maybe without intention, of course. And this can be related to an impact on education, on their education, because through products we are informing them, educating them on some values, some some areas of the society. So this is a very interesting point that we had discussed. Also, we impact on the health and safety of the children as consumers when we buy products that are not safe and we didn't know. We hear from many accidents that happen sometimes when children use products without caution. There is also children gender problems as consumers when this gender bias is promoted without clear intention, but it exists. So you see there are aspects that are new, and I wanted to highlight them because they are the most recent data sheets, methodological sheets that we are about to finalize. Also, a new one is on the society, the last one that you see, number 7, ethical animal treatment. We didn't know where to locate this one because even we discussed if this should be another stakeholder group like animals, but then we said no. Actually, it's a group of the society that is concerned, but in general, we need to provide guidance on what this means and in which sectors or areas this needs to be addressed. We are talking about testing, of course, about the well-being of the animals, even in the cases where they are being used for products. So there is a whole discussion there, and this is now a new subcategory of impact. Otherwise, I will pass because we don't have time for discussing each of them. Now, as a next step, what we will define is the type of assessment. So we define the stakeholders now. Before collecting data, we need to see which assessment type we are pursuing. And for this, we'll explain that there are 2 types, type 1 and type 2. And type 1 has a shorter name and it's called the reference scale approach. And this is about describing a product system with focus on its social performance. So it's about providing the necessary information in order to compare it with a given reference, a threshold, could be a threshold, and say we are compliant, we are far from, we are not compliant with what is expected, we have a very poor performance. There are several ways to compare this with the reference scale. The type 2 is aiming at predicting the consequences of a product system. This is more closely to what we are used to in environmental LCA, where we have models, cost chain effects, where we have even consequential LCA. So this is more about, this requires more modeling, and we have to also admit that in social LCA, for many socioeconomic impact categories, we don't have enough research, we don't have enough tools, models in order to complete a type 2 assessment fully. That's why we either have a combination of both, or we mainly use the type 1 assessment approach for doing a social LCA. Perhaps the area in which type 2 is most advanced for social LCA is when we talk about health-related aspects, because for this there are models, this exposure to substances, for example, that impacts on your health. Then there is a lot of information, but besides that, it's very, very non-balanced the way the other subcategories of impact are have been researched. So through social LCA, then we have the identification of hotspots and subcategories, as I mentioned, and the hotspots are linked to the stakeholder groups that we have defined. This is an important definition, the social hotspot. It can be a location or an activity in the life cycle where a social issue of, with a huge impact could occur. That's why this needs to be identified. And this is actually helpful if you do in advance a pre-assessment on what the potential social hotspots could be. You have two ways. You can do a literature research if you are close to the area, to the product you are working on, which I do often because I focus on certain areas like electronics and I know more or less the situation. Or if I don't know very much the area, I use a database that is social hotspot database through which I can navigate and identify the critical hotspots for each for different activities, for different regions in the world as well, and for different subcategories of impact. This is about electronic equipment, labor rights, child labor in the different countries, as you can see. In red are the ones with highest negative impacts, or what we say risks of negative impacts, because it's about risks. It's not about the real situation. It's giving you indications of risks. There is another database that is Slca, also on social hotspots, that you could also take into consideration. So we have then the stakeholders per impact categories, as mentioned before. Let's think of workers and human rights, just to have an example. In the social LCA work frame, you have the life cycle stages defined, and for this specific example, you could choose for workers the subcategory of child labor and gender equity. In that case, it's gender pay gap, gender-related aspects. And for these subcategories, you collect data and on the specific indicators, such as on age for child labor and gender pay gap for gender-related issues. And the inventory data will give you, in this case, it's possible, quantitative indicators. In some cases, it's not possible. So we will have like 5% as gender pay gap as in the inventory data, and 14 as the year and the age concerning the child labor. Of course, this is related to 14 years old and the number of children that age in that facility, etc. So there needs to be a description of the indicator. But this is to give you an example on how you start documenting the subcategories, the indicators, and the data. An example when assessing the gender pay gap. There are two types, the unadjusted pay gap and the adjusted pay gap. The unadjusted pay gap means it's just the overall difference in average pay for men and women. But as you understand, the payments refer to qualifications, refer to numbers of years of experience, of locations, of types of industry, etc. Even though you can have exactly the same role, sometimes even the same type of activity. So that's why it's more correct to talk about the adjusted pay gap. And according to some reports, there are countries with more, differences in this related to this indicator. So the gender pay gap is higher. We have one country where it's really excellent, Colombia, Juliana. South Korea is 33%. This is according to statistics until 2016. So what can result when doing the assessment is that you could have the pay gaps, the more narrow, the smallest numbers are the adjusted ones, like in France of 2.7%, in Germany 3%, in Britain 0.8% pay gap. And these are numbers that could be used as in the inventory. So once we have the subcategories, the type of assessment, we already started with the inventory, and I don't know if we will have time for this short example. The activity variable is important. Another definition that really helps to have a social LCA developed per functional unit. Let's say we have 10 t-shirts. The activity variable defined in this example is worker hours. This is a very helpful activity variable because based on that, you can account for the production that results. You can account for number of accidents, for example. This is the most usual activity variable used, and we recommend it to use. You could use other activity variables such as monetary flows, but it's a bit more complicated. You need more information, which is sometimes confidential. So starting with activity variable working hours, I can quickly ask you, and you can answer in the chat, what is the ratio of accidents per t-shirt in the facility? Facility here is where you have a production of 10 t-shirts, right? This is what I mean. And you had one accident in this facility where you didn't only produce the 10 t-shirts, but you also produced jeans. It doesn't matter how many. You use 3 hours to produce the t-shirts and 2 hours to produce the rest. Then what is the ratio of accidents per t-shirt in the facility? Maybe can someone read me a number in the chat? Three hours is 60% of the total hours worked in the facility, right? That means 60% of the time is used to produce 10 t-shirts, right? If there is only one accident, then what does it mean?
There's a question from Adriano. What is the FU? If you could answer to
what is
to Adriano. Was it the FU?
The functional unit.
The functional unit. In that case, I'm asking you for just trying to understand the ratio of accidents per t-shirt in the facility. It could be 10 t-shirts, huh? Could be the functional unit 10 t-shirts. Okay, so if we have like 60% is the time invested to produce 10 t-shirts, and you have one accident for 10 t-shirts, so it's then the result 0.
Yeah, I've got one answer, 0.06.
Perfect. Yeah. This is exact. So this is just to really justify and to explain how useful the activity variable working hours could be when you have a number of indicators that are of different nature, and how you can translate them in indicators. So this was a bit the explanation of the calculation. We already explained why working hours. And now we go to the impact assessment that we'll explain what they are. And on the reference scale approach, maybe to complement that there are some methodologies that I like to use to define a scoring system, scale levels from -2 to +2 or -5 to +5. It depends. They define also they base also on laws, on thresholds according to the law, compliance, not compliance. So there are different methods, but in this way you can be a bit creative because it's no one approach only. And the positive impact also, this is a very interesting part. You can have different types. Again, you have type A, B, and C. In type A, for positive impact, you have positive social performance. That means it's going beyond business as usual. It doesn't mean you were really having new positive impacts. It means you're doing the same, but you are improving. In type B, what you have is by being in this new location, you created jobs only because you are there. you created impacts. This is the type B. The sole presence of the company or product is creating an impact on the consumer, on the workers. And type C is about the product's usefulness. That means the product itself is so good. We can talk about food in itself is a good product. So then there is a type C, type of positive impact. And
sorry to interrupt, Sonia.
Yes.
I think we need to wrap up in about 5 minutes so we can have some time for Q&A.
I finished. I almost finished. It's just to conclude on the results that I already mentioned at the beginning. You have the distance to target on the SDGs. You can have the inventory data on this adjusted gender gap. This is how you communicate, and you say that your impact is slightly negative. It's not as negative as 30%, for example. And in summary, these are the 5 steps towards the impacts evaluation. For example, conducted, you select the impact subcategory, identify the impact indicators, define the impact evaluation method, develop the inventory, and evaluate the impact, could be distance to target, and determine the footprint's nature. If it's a negative impact, you call it footprint. If it's a positive impact, you call it handprint. And I think with these examples that you will receive the slide deck, you will be able to at least start with this tool that I do believe is not as complicated. So I invite you to start doing social LCAs and use the results for improving our society's lives. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, please, Juliana. Are you okay to stay a little bit longer, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to answer some questions? Thank you. Yeah, we have quite a lot of questions here. So the first one from Yara, asking how do we know that the life cycle sustainability assessments are carried out if they are private?
How do we know? Because, for example, there are chemical companies, there are electronic companies that for designing processes, for evaluation processes of the impacts, they need to be very sure about the results. So they even do not only rely on data from database, from McKinsey and other databases. They collect data from the field. And only then they can be sure about the product they are launching to the market. And a big chemical company like Dow Chemicals, they develop thousands of LCAs. So we have talked with experts that work there. They will not tell you the results, they will not give you the studies, but they tell you we have to do an environmental LCA of every product we produce. The same with the electronic companies. This is to give you examples. So can you imagine there are large companies that also need to be very, very clear, very certain about what they are doing. And this is very good for designing purposes.
Thank you for that. Next question from Tiago, asking, is it possible to have a S-LCA study with reference scale approach for some impact categories and impact pathway approach for other impact categories on the same impact assessment?
Yes, you can have the combination, yes. Then you present the results in combination.
Okay, next question from Martina. Where is it possible to find all the indicators used in social LCA?
You have the methodological sheets. As I mentioned, there is an old publication of 2013, I think, or 12 or 13, where you have the definitions of the subcategories of impact with the indicators proposed. This is available in the website of the Life Cycle Initiative. We will publish a revision of them by the end of the year, and they will be made available as well.
Okay, I think the next question is a following up question with the previous question. So asking, is there the intention to create a common social assay methodology with common and strict rules to conduct social assay, a sort of product environmental footprint for social aspects?
Very good question. Actually, not yet. But there is always the idea floating when we talk with European Commission officers. I mean, there is always like, would be nice, would be interesting, but of course it's not there yet. There is still discussions and needs for revisions on the environment, on the PEF, no, on PEF, and so we are not there yet. But we would like to promote that social is being kept also as an important assessment, not just environmental. That for sure.
Next question from Antonio. How far are we from having the standardization of the social assay methodology, and which aspects are more important or more critical in this regard?
Well, thank you very much for this question. I forgot to mention and write down the number ISO 14075. Why? Because this is the new social LCA standard, ISO standard that is going to start. I mean, this got just approved, and we are starting with the development of this ISO standard this year. It will take 2 years, 3 years max, and you will have it.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Piringa. On slide 11 about Delta S-LCA versus environmental LCA. What is an example indicator for performance of an organization's administration?
From the social perspective. Well, in social LCA, what we have is a possible indicator management system. If you have a well operating management system, because we concur that by having a well management system, then what you have inside can be well implemented. And these are the socioeconomic techniques, the social LCAs, for example. So this is a management related indicator. If I don't know if I answered your question.
And next question from Jeremy, how to choose or prioritize the social issues that need to be included in the social LCA?
Yes, well, there are several criteria, of course. We have the first one, like is compliance. Anyways, the minimum, right? When I studied the possibility of child labor in a value chain, it was critical because having child labor would mean non-compliance. This is not acceptable. So there are issues where you clearly say this is non-negotiable. We don't accept this. So these are the priority ones. Another issue that is a priority is the compliance with the law concerning working conditions. That if you have workers, they need to the contracts need to be duly implemented, for example. So there are groups, no, of issues that are linked with compliance. It can be national compliance or international conventions compliance. I would start with this. And second group, I would start with the issues of most concern from the side of the stakeholder groups. If you hear a number of complaints from certain neighbor groups about the type of activities you are carrying out, I don't know, the traffic and the accidents, I don't know. So maybe this is a hotspot. So I would start with two sources. Then for this you would need information from the field.
Okay, next question from Wing. Is the children gender issue not also occurring for adults?
The children issues?
Yeah, the children gender issue.
Yeah, definitely. But this is a different scale. I mean, for children, it's like, for example, buying or producing products where you are biased and do not consider in that case, girls issues. It could be types of bicycles. I'm not saying that there are no bicycles for girls. I'm saying like there are toys or products for children that are not considering their needs, and there could be a bias there. So we identify that this happens in several cases. So in products types, and we were not aware of that. It also addresses the marketing aspects, where companies develop marketing campaigns for girls, children, for boys, children. So then you start generating these gender discussions already at an early stage, or gender behavior. I mean, I don't want to say this is black and white, but we need to take this into consideration.
Thank you. And I'm afraid this has to be the last question. So the last question from Laurie. So would it be correct to say that type 1 is current or short-term performance, while type 2 is long-term, for example, 20 years ahead?
Very good point. I don't like to say 20 years, perhaps 5 years, 5 to 10, because also you recognize, maybe you started to understand that when we have all these 37 subcategories of impact, each of them need different tools, different models, different techniques for their assessment. This is where we have to start and one by one address and develop what is needed. From that point of view, you're right. We need mid, long term. Maybe some will need much longer and some much shorter, but this is where we are. And you're right, one is more short term, that for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Sonia, for the wonderful seminar. So I'm now going to hand over to Juliana for the ending remarks. Please, Juliana.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for such an engaging presentation. I'm pretty sure that many E-LCA practitioners will appreciate it, and especially those concerned with expanding their capabilities or reinforcing their knowledge towards sustainability assessment. So I am really pleased with this seminar, and it will be very helpful, including myself. And yes, and to all the attendees, please follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn and join our member list, and see you at the next seminar, which will be announced very soon. And cheers, and thank you very much again, Sunny.
Thank you all. If I could receive the questions, that would be very nice. I think they were very interesting questions.
Yeah, sure, Sonia, I can send them to you.
Great, and I wish you a very nice evening.
Yes, have a nice evening.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.